Chapter 152 is here and it was absolutely amazing. We finally got to see Aqua's interview from the start of the manga actually happen, but with an insane twist at the end of it, something I think no one was expecting. Plus we got confirmation that the final arc is starting in the next chapter. It's finally happening. As for this chapter, it opens with Gotanda being interviewed, likely the same interview we saw at the start of the manga. Here he's explaining that he didn't intend to add much fiction to this work. It's something based on reality, wrapped up to appear as a form of entertainment, which is a good way to describe that this movie is based on real life events. When the interviewer asks if Gotanda has anything left to say, he says that this movie is dedicated to Ai, that's all, just like he did in the original interview. Then the narrator explains that a preliminary version of the film was shown to all relevant personnel, such as members of the film crew and cast members. After Gotanda's brief opening speech, the 2-hour and 16-minute movie was shown. By the end of it, the sounds of crying could be heard all across the room. As the narrator explains, some of these tears were either from the sense of accomplishment or those a part of the production, while others cried due to the story itself. However, Akane's tears are supposedly neither of those reasons. She has somewhat of a smile, it looks like, so my guess is that she was happy with how it ended, or maybe even for Aqua in some way. As they head outside though, Frill is still crying and says that Gotanda is truly amazing for directing a film like this. Memcho points out that Frill's crying is a bit unusual though. Frill then explains that she knows everyone worked hard, but if she's honest, there were some bad performances. She was genuinely worried how the quality would turn out in the end, but was ultimately relieved, reminded by how amazing professionals can be. Of course, Ruby's the first to question who Frill was talking about with the bad acting, and kinda immediately points out that it was probably Ruby. No mercy from her. Luckily for Ruby, Frill says that the editing was done in a way that made even the poor acting attractive, and Memcho mentions that the one who did the editing was none other than Aqua, his Siscon side coming out to ensure Ruby doesn't look bad, which kinda sorta mentions. It's pretty cool that Aqua did a lot of the editing though, paying off the years of editing he did while studying under Gotanda for all those years. Then Melt shows up to clarify that while it was definitely rough at the beginning, only Ruby could pull off the last scene of the film. He even specifically states that it was only possible because Ruby was the one who did it, which is high praise. Of course, Ruby's excited to hear that, and looks ready to hug Melt or something, while calling him master, which Melt still isn't a fan of yet. Seeing those two interacting like that is still strange, not gonna lie, but it's cool to see Melt having someone that actually respects him like that. Maybe he'll be more involved with the rest of the story moving forward, thanks to this connection with Ruby. Speaking of Ruby, the narrator explains that Ruby's final performance really did determine how the movie would be received. Then we cut to Gotanda being asked by Kaburagi if he was able to capture what he wanted to film. Did he capture the real Ai Hoshino? Even now though, Gotanda is still a bit unsure. After all, they'll never be able to know the real answer with Ai gone. At least Gotanda was able to lessen his personal regrets a bit, feeling he can now finally move forward. Then Gotanda asks if it's the same for Kaburagi. Hasn't he always carried the responsibility and guilt for bringing Ai and Hikaru together? That's actually a very interesting question because I don't think Kaburagi would have a reason to regret that in the first place until he knew Hikaru was the one behind Ai's murder. Like I'm sure now he regretted it, but not always because he didn't know what Hikaru did. I hope you guys can get what I'm trying to say here. As Gotanda says though, Kaburagi has put all his cards on the table, his money, connections, everything he has to make this project happen. If this movie doesn't become a huge success, his future position might be in jeopardy. Putting everything on the line could be his own way of making amends towards Ai, and for the sake of her children. Kaburagi is silent at first, before attempting to say that he no longer feels guilty over such trivial matters. He's not that passionate type of guy after all. Gotanda responds by reminding Kaburagi if he originally entered this industry to become a movie director. Now that gets a reaction from Kaburagi, and he questions where Gotanda heard that from. Gotanda says that it's a small world though, meaning it wasn't too hard to hear it come up in conversation. He's certain that Kaburagi hasn't given up, even now either. To him, it's a lie to say someone like Kaburagi isn't passionate. Kaburagi still looks a bit stunned, deep in thought, before calling Gotanda a bad guy, and walking away. Gotanda says to stop sulking before Kaburagi stops at the door. He questions if Gotanda hates him, but then remembers, since it's Gotanda, he'd probably just laugh and ask what Kaburagi's talking about. So instead, Kaburagi just questions if he was of any help, even if it was just a little bit, while we see a flashback panel of Kaburagi eating with a young Ai. Both of them happy. It's a bittersweet panel showing us that Kaburagi did indeed care about Ai after all. But then we just cut to Aqua getting ready for his interview. with some guy who has the same hairstyle as him almost. What a coincidence. The interviewer begins by saying he watched the screen in too, and felt Aqua played a very challenging role. Considering the difficulty of the role, the interviewer asks what motivated Aqua to appear in the film. Was it for his mother Ai, or his sister Ruby? Then we see Aqua in the same pose he had in the original interview, and he actually answers the exact same way, by saying he doesn't act to make people happy. He acts for himself, and it's up to the viewer to choose how they feel about it. But then this interviewer presses Aqua further, by mentioning how Aqua seems to deeply care for other members of the cast. And those same members, like Akane, Ruby, and Kana, who we see in the panel, seem to care about Aqua just as much. That causes Aqua to answer with the second line he had in the interview, that he won't love someone, and even if they love him, he won't give them anything in return. Then if they still choose to love him, that's their choice. However, the interviewer immediately calls out Aqua by saying that's a lie. They press on by saying it's because they're so important to him that he keeps his distance. Aqua just says they can interpret that however they want. Then the suspicious interviewer asks why Aqua tries so hard to suppress himself. Then this is where Aqua answers by saying that acting is revenge to him. However, that's not all we get, as we finally get to see who's behind the camera and what Aqua has to say next. Aqua is being interviewed by none other than Hikaru himself, and he tells his father that it's a revenge against him, the one who took away their mother. What an insane plot twist. From the start, Aqua had planned this out the whole time. Hikaru was the one interviewing Aqua, which actually explains the answers he gave, trying to protect those he loves. Aqua saying he wouldn't love anyone is a lie, and of course Hikaru immediately knew. It's a nice callback to Ai revealing that she knew Hikaru was lying back then too. Hikaru and Ai were great liars, so of course he would be able to tell immediately when their own son was lying too. Perfect writing. The chapter itself ends with Aqua telling Hikaru that unless he's gonna get his revenge, they won't be able to move toward the future. With that, we can now move on to the final arc, towards the stars and dreams. What a great segue into what's bound to be an entertaining final arc. We do have a break next week though, but Aqua and Manga deserve it for what they cooked in this chapter. With the way Hikaru spoke, it seems like he knew the people Aqua really cares about now, especially with that panel showing Akane, Kana, and Ruby. Aqua tried his best to make it seem like he didn't care, but Hikaru saw right through that and might now target one of those three after Aqua's declaration of war. It really seems like Aqua is now committed to get revenge one way or another, which I'm at least happy to see. I also really like how we got to see the interviews from the start of the story happen now in real time. It shows how far we've come and now adds another dimension to the interviews, now that we know the context. Aqua talking to Hikaru is still crazy to me. It's the first time we see them interact, something which we've waited for so long to see, yet we already saw it without knowing, from the start. Now I wonder if we'll see the other interviews happen, and if we get further context to all of them. Now that we're in the final arc, and Aqua has met with Hikaru, how do y'all think it's gonna play out? Will Aqua kill his father, or will Hikaru just turn himself in or something? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe. I got some more Shinoko content here too that you can check out. Peace.